And now, our feature contemplation.
Speaking Cinema with Andrew Schwartz.
Welcome to the Speaking Cinema podcast. I'm Andrew Schwartz, broadcasting to you from Los Angeles, California. And I'd like to just take a moment to say that right off the bat that if there's any echo in this audio recording, I would appreciate if you would just forgive me, because I am moving from one place to another in LA right now and broadcasting to you from an empty apartment. And I have a great returning visiting guest right here in the studio, in the apartment with me. And we'll reintroduce him in a second. But today, we're going to the ballpark with Bennett Miller's Moneyball from 2011. And I'm really excited to talk about this movie. It's the first movie of its type that we've talked about on this podcast. And I would like to welcome everyone, all of the listeners, and to thank you again for constantly supporting us and allowing us to just keep picking a nice variety of movies and giving us great feedback. And, of course, to the guests who are, whether they're new guests or returning guests like this one, I'm just so grateful for all of you guys, for your passion and coming to the table with all of the things that you love about movies and getting into those nitty-gritty details with me. It's just so much fun, and I really appreciate it. So, with that said, I'm going right to introducing our guest who has returned after doing Ghost World with me, which was such a fun time. Writer and director Jesse Mendelsohn. Jesse, thanks for coming back.
Hi, thank you. I'm ready for spring ball.
I'm ready for spring training.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the spirit.
Yeah.
That's the spirit, Jesse. I am too. So let's get right into it here. We've got Moneyball, and what an interesting movie this is. It's the genre technically is biography, drama, sport, and yet it's really cool because I feel like each of those three genres, biography, drama, sport, you think about something kind of specific in your head about each of them, right?
Right.
And this movie is kind of all of them and none of them, particularly at least the sort of caricaturization we think of, or what first comes to mind when we hear those genres. So I think it's just really special.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's a really special film because it's, as you said, all of these things and none of them, and also a comedy. And it's really about it's about people, not events.
Right.
That to me is the core of this movie.
Right. And there are so many moments on this podcast where in the past, either I've said or guests have said, or both, that, oh, this moment is so human. I'm so moved by movies that are about people.
Yeah.
And just tell us about what it is to be this particular person in this particular time, right, in their life, or this moment in history, for example. And this movie kind of does all of those things. And because for the first time, we're really talking about a movie that is biographical. This content is, some of the characters are fictitious. However, it's based on, the very lead characters are not fictitious. And it's based on events that actually happened.
Right.
And we get a nice little microscope view into the personal aspects of these characters and how these real events affected them as people.
Yes.
Right?
That said, they are fictionalized. They are not supposed to be indicative of the real people.
Right.
That one thing, some movies are trying to really capture what actually happened and how that affected them. And as much as this is about Billy Beane, I think there are a lot of liberties taken.
Oh, sure. And I hope we're going to get to that.
Yeah,
we're going to get
sure.
right under the hood about all of that and how that device is used. Because again, on this podcast, we love to talk about the meaning and interpreting what it is that these people are trying to tell us and why they make the choices that they make. Whether it's a casting choice, whether it's a writing choice, a cinematography choice, etc. Right? So what matters is what we're actually seeing on the screen. Right? It could be a depiction of a real event, but what we're seeing on that screen and what they're saying and what we're hearing, it's all deliberate, right? And we're trying to unpack all of this stuff here, and we're trying to make sense of what is going on and why, so that we can get something out of this thing and talk about it. This movie, along with so many others out there that don't get enough love, warrants discussion.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think this movie is unique from the ones that you've done so far because it is a very subtle film and yet entirely clear with what it's saying.
Yes.
There are little moments that clue you in and everyone understands them. It's the perfect balance between clarity and confusion, subtle and obvious. And I think that's the reason it's not discussed is because so much of the surface is bedded in that it feels like you've dug deep just by watching it, but there's so much more here.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm so excited to get to.
Yeah.
We're going to mine, baby. We're going to plumb those depths. Okay, so I'm going to get right to the logline read here because we've got a pretty simple logline, and that's going to just shift us right into the movie, and then we are going to do a title take after that. So the logline for Moneyball is Oakland A's general manager Billy Beane's successful attempt to assemble a baseball team on a lean budget by employing computer-generated analysis to acquire new players. Man, that's clinical.
Yeah.
Are we reading like a Haynes manual for a car, or are we reading a logline for a movie?
That's about as accurate to a description of a movie I've ever seen, and yet, just like Ghost World, it does not even begin to cover it.
Of course. Yeah, but I do think that it's very like booky and clinical and like step 1, remove from package.
Step 2, analyze players.
Exactly. Do not eat packing peanuts. I mean, again, it does get us into the film in that it is saying everything, but it's how do you explain this movie and sell it, right? It's very, very difficult. To do without using all of these kind of words like successful attempt to assemble a team, computer generated analysis.
And that's exactly why I didn't watch it when it first came out.
Oh, interesting. Tell us more about that. Why?
It just felt clinical. It felt like a by the numbers attempt at telling this story. And I did not see the charm coming.
And are you referring to like you saw the trailer and that's what gave you that idea?
I don't remember. I don't remember. There's, it's from 2009 or whatever, 10.
Yeah, 11.
11, 9, 10, 11. So I don't remember if I ever saw the trailer or if I never got around to watching it or what. But my impression from the marketing was uninteresting.
Yeah. I kind of remember that it was a vibe.
Yeah.
Like everyone knew that there was a baseball movie of some kind out.
And people were talking about it and excited. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And I just missed the boat. And then I saw it a few years later.
Right. Yeah, I definitely saw it a few years later, too. I definitely did not see this at the time that it came out. And I think I might have been a little young to understand all of the, more deep implications of the caricatures, of the character study moments and all of the things that are involved in the business of this thing. Because I feel like that's what, and that's what this logline is giving us. It's telling us right off the bat, hey, these are businessy words. This is more of a science kind of approach here. We're trying to figure out, we're crunching numbers. We're figuring out how to do things on a budget.
Right.
It's like, that's what I meant by
it's
booky.
Process oriented.
Yes, exactly. It's very process oriented. It seems a little bit robotic. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, ooh, if I only saw this log line, or maybe a trailer that sort of exemplified this log line, I would probably be thinking to myself, because I can't remember if I saw the trailer either, well, it's a movie about the process of what? Baseball?
Right. It's funny because it feels like the flip coin to The Martian.
Yeah.
It's a process film. It's about details. It's about specifics. And yet we're trailing we're following along this movie from the point of view of the characters
Yeah.
as they do this, and we learn it in the moment. We learn just enough to move through the scenes.
Right.
But specifically, all the signs and the thoughts are from the point of view of a layman. Just like in baseball, we're coming in this through these people.
Yeah.
We're learning about what is important hits,
Yes.
runs,
Yeah, that's true.
not fielding, not the pop of the bat
Right.
when you hit. And there's like, oh, he's got a good pop, you know.
Right.
We learn what the difference is and why they care.
Yes, and you're sort of likening that to sort of like the science
Yes,
of
exactly.
astronomy and astrophysics and
Yeah,
things,
when
and the
they're
Martian. Yeah.
Exactly.
Sure, yeah. Cultivating a little space garden.
Yeah.
You know, like none of us have done that before. I mean, come on, everyone's done that. All right, so Jesse, let's do a quick title take here, which will bring us into talking about some, lead characters and some scenes after that.
Of course, let's take that title.
Let's do it. So, Moneyball. Really what this is I believe it's taken from the book by Michael Lewis.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not sure how much this term has been used before that. I think it's basically, I don't know if it's exclusive to that book, but it basically is used, really Michael Lewis had written this book. This is an adaptation, of course. And then Michael Lewis's book was basically based on these characters and these events and so on, which in itself is based on the Bill James book, which is kind of reviled in baseball. They mention it a lot of times in the movie. Like, oh,
Right.
Bill James,
Yeah.
baseball hates him because he's just a scientist. He was, like a security guard or something.
Right.
And but apparently a very mathematical one. Those are a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
But and he wrote this book about just pure cold statistics and how they sort of run the game, because baseball is so statistic heavy.
Yeah.
It's a slow game, and there's a lot of things that happen in it and a lot of moving parts, and there's so many statistics, and they keep adding new ones, and I can't keep up. And so he kind of took that and just sort of, there's this idea that he just sucked all of the like fun and life and spiritual aspect from the game and just made it a cold hard value.
Right.
Right.
And we'll
yeah.
get into who started the arms race.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's really where this title Moneyball comes from. And the book has a slightly longer title, but Moneyball is I believe the first word, and then there's colon and then something else. But Moneyball, I believe they also use it in sports now too. Like, oh, they don't really Moneyball much anymore. Or,
Yeah.
or this team is Moneyballing.
It's pretty common, yeah, especially in
Yeah.
soccer, where we
Yeah.
have the big teams.
Sure.
Manchester United and City and Liverpool, Real
Yeah.
Madrid, they're all the big teams, and they have the budgets, and they have the rules on their side.
The British Premier League.
Yeah, and the British
Yeah.
Premier League and the Spanish La Liga. But they have the rules on their side, which allow them to spend more money than the competition, not just because they have more money,
Right. Right.
which is interesting. But a
Yeah.
topic for a different day.
Oh, it is. We could do 7 other podcasts about 7 aspects of sports.
But we'll get to how the Yankees relate.
Absolutely. Jesse's foaming at the mouth to talk about something with these guys over here, but you'll have plenty of opportunities.
Yeah.
Do you think that this was a good title for this movie?
Yeah, it's a perfect title.
Yeah, I think so too. The full title of the book would have been too much.
Yeah.
It says what it needs to say.
Yeah, it says what it needs to say. It's intriguing, and the imagery from the poster and the key art can supplement the sport.
And the other thing about this title is Billy's character is very intent on wanting to create something within the game or reinvent the game, I think is the word that he uses, right? He's so hell-bent on leaving his mark in a unique way and maybe not necessarily creating something, but again, reinventing. And basically through what he did, he, whether maybe not inventing this word, but he had brought the word into commonality in the sports world, right? This is we're doing the Billy Beane thing here.
Right.
We're moneyballing.
Yeah.
Right. He made his mark, and this word is so deeply associated with him. You know, they're so linked to each other. Billy Beane, this character, and this word, Moneyball. Mm-hmm. And this movie is about how that all came to fruition. And in that respect, I think it's a really cool title. Because instead of just calling the movie Billy Beane.
Right.
You know?
Or Billy.
Or Billy.
Yeah.
Billy Bob Beane.
Yeah.
It's indicative of who the guy is in a different kind of way.
And it's the principle for which he's living his life and how he sees the world beyond the game, before the game. He just didn't know it.
Right. And also, full disclosure, I'm not the biggest baseball fan.
Yeah,
funny enough, I am a Mets fan because I do come from New York and I was sort of born and raised a Mets fan. But who was the team that first drafted Billy, which is kind of interesting. But I'm not a huge baseball lover, and I'm sure this is going to come up a lot. It's hard not to be romantic about baseball.
Yeah, exactly.
In this framework, in this context, and I really do enjoy the game. I just wish I had time to see that many games in a season.
Yeah,
and it does sometimes go a little bit slow for me, and it's just a hustle and bustle world, I'll tell you. Yeah. So, but the point is, I just want to let everyone out there know, I do not want this episode, just like the movie doesn't want to be, just an endless onslaught of clinical baseball rhetoric, right? That you're just drowning in, right? This is a movie that I think prides itself on being accessible to everyone. I mean, I was reading into reviews and things of this movie. There are so many just regular mainstream moviegoers that have said of this movie, hey, I've never watched a baseball game in my life, but this movie rocks.
Yeah.
And how exciting is that? To bring not just the fans, not just the fringe fans, and not just the fringe of the fringe fans.
People who've never seen the game.
People that have never seen the game can access this movie. And not just access the movie, but walk away from the movie at the end being like, I get this guy.
Yeah.
It's bigger than just baseball. There's so much going on here.
Yeah.
And it just makes it warms the cockles of my heart. But let's go right into our lead character reveal, because we already mentioned him a little bit. It's Billy Beane. We're going to go right into the intro and the opening very soon. But Billy Beane is introduced in this opening sequence. He is an ex-baseball player, right? Turned scout, and now he's a general manager. So he's kind of worked his way up in the sort of business side of sports, but he was this huge prospect, right? And everyone thought he was a 5-tool player. He had this and this and this and this and this going for him. He could hit and he could throw and he could catch and all this amazing stuff. He could run. And he was so highly anticipated to be this successful player. The new, the new Babe Ruth. I don't know. The new Mickey Mantle.
The new somebody.
The new someone. And all that pressure was on him. And he was a young kid. And he sort of chose to go there to the show, to the MLB, the Major League. And he basically just blew a tire. Right, he crumbled under the pressure, and he could not. Yeah. He just could not perform for the New York Mets, and then he got traded around a little bit, and then bam, he was gone, and chose to be a scout instead. So that's Billy Beane, our sort of lead character coach, and then we have some other people on his Oakland Athletics, as in Oakland, California, for y'all. Oakland Athletics team. He managed that team, and then we have Philip Seymour Hoffman, who plays Al,
the head coach,
the head coach, or I think the manager. Isn't it called the manager
as opposed to general manager?
Yeah, as opposed to general manager.
Sure, why not?
I don't know. I think so. Mr. Howe, and then we have a bunch of players, and
of course, don't forget
Jonah Hill as Pete.
I don't care who you are. Who are you?
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the team. But yeah, it's a very, very important character who's the other lead, really.
Yeah.
Or the main supporting character would be Pete. And that's a really cool character who we'll talk about. He's sort of like this kid who works for a different team, and he's just sort of like a numbers cruncher and an analysis player and an analyst. And Billy goes and visits him and takes him away from that team and sees something in him. So, and it's about this partnership of these two guys, right? Billy and Pete coming together and sort of changing the game forever.
Yeah.
And that's pretty powerful.
And what I love about this opening is that he's not watching the game.
Right.
All he's doing is listening just enough to know when they lose.
Right.
He knows they're going to
cool.
lose.
Yes.
He's not at the game because he doesn't want to see them lose.
Yeah. And it just, all of these things I feel like are just going to sort of reflect or take us back to the original story of Billy or his backstory, what has happened to him in life.
Yeah.
Everything sort of wants to channel itself back to that sort of formative moment in his early years, and we'll go over that. But yeah, speaking of this opening image, I'll briefly summarize it, and then I'd love to get your thoughts on the vibe, what you think it meant for the rest of the story. We'll really get into it here. So we open with an on-screen quote, a title, and it's a Mickey Mantle title. It's a Mickey Mantle quote. He says, "It's unbelievable how much you don't know about the game you've been playing all your life." Oh, chills, man, chills. Okay, and then our first actual image in the narrative of the movie is it's just a bunch of MLB gameplay footage.
Right.
It's the middle
which I think is the most important part of this sequence.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because it sets up time and place, sets up location, and it gives you a look into the theme.
Right. Yeah, the first glance right into the theme
of it's because we're not at a baseball game. We're watching it on TV, the business of baseball.
But we don't know that yet.
Well, no,
it's
because it is not footage shot like a movie of you there.
That's true. It's like
footage
archival
of a tape.
Footage. Yes, it is footage of a tape.
It looks like what you would see on TV in 2003.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So it's giving you a glimpse of the business of the league.
Right. But it being that first image, you sort of know that it's tape, but you don't know where the outer sort of character is.
No.
Yet,
it's just setting
until
the
they pull
mood,
away
the
from
tone,
the TV.
and the tape.
Exactly. Right. So speaking of time and place, they tell us that it's the middle of August. It's August 15th, 2001. Okay? They're telling us this is the footage of the American League Division Series elimination game. Okay? It's the A's at the Yankees in New York. Okay? And we start of this medium shot of one of these very important players, Damon, right? Johnny Damon, I believe. And then it kind of goes to a wide sort of that press angle of the pitcher in the foreground and the catcher and the batter in the background. And then the pitcher throws a strike, and then Damon hits a double, and then Giambi gets up and he hits a double. It brings Damon home. It's a 1-0 lead. We're feeling the game. We're into it. Right. It seems like the A's have got a shot at this. And then a title card comes up again. It says $114 million versus $39 million.
Yes.
And to be clear, I'm just telling you guys that it was the A's and the Yankees. They don't tell you it's the A's versus the Yankees. They just tell you, hey, this is the American League Division Series, elimination game. And then what it does tell you is instead of teams, it gives you $114 million versus $39 million. Right? Okay, so that reveals that. And then right under that, it kind of reveals a little more information in that same title card that the Yankees are next to the $114 million and the A's are next to the $39 million. So that we see the numbers first, then we see which number is associated with what team.
Exactly.
Right? So that's kind of cool. Then the Yankees take the lead, and then they get the title. We get the title in the middle of the screen. Okay, end to end. Moneyball. Unfortunately, the A's are eliminated. I also thought it was kind of interesting how it's the A's players. Eric Burns, I think it's his first at bat in Yankee Stadium, Like, can you just imagine the pressure?
Yeah.
First at bat, this guy's a rookie. It's his, and he's in Yankee Stadium, this ridiculous commercial success team.
Right.
And he's in the most famous city in the country, this most famous stadium in the country. And there he is shaking in his knickers. He's trying to keep them alive, their season alive. And I just, it's terrifying to even think about.
Yeah.
We pull away and reveal that it's a TV. And we reveal Billy Beane is watching the TV.
Well, he's not.
Yeah.
Isn't he listening to the radio in the stadium?
First,
the guard is watching.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. The guard is watching the TV. And then we see a bunch of establishing shots of just these very quiet, no sound, low light of the athletics ballpark.
Yeah.
And some wide shots, all different seats and hallways and stuff. And it's very kind of forlorn and empty. And then we do see, you're right, Billy Beane listening on the radio, which he liked to do, or the little TV, tiny TV.
And then to me, the one thing that is off the rails in this movie comes up, and that's Brad Pitt, the star, meeting Billy Beane, the character. He walks into the hallway and talks to the security guard, and the security guard turns the TV off. And he says, no, you can watch. Don't worry about me. And it's such a celebrity moment that he has to think about other people and how they live their lives because he walked in the room. Yeah. And I don't know that another actor in that role, that choice resonates.
Yeah, that's a great point.
There's so many choices where Brad Pitt commands the room. Yeah. And I wonder how much of that is the character and the writing, and how much is that is the magnetism of Brad Pitt. Yeah. And it's something to explore.
I would also love to explore that with Brad.
Yeah, just Brad, come on.
Yeah. I mean, I'll ask him next Sunday when we have lunch together.
Yeah, sure.
No, but I really would have loved to ask him about that, because that must have been a hell of an experience, just putting yourself in that place as an actor. It always is. But you're right, But the other thing is, it's a totally different flavor of celebrity, right? Because what he is he's more notorious, or he's infamous, Billy Beane, right? He's infamous for failure. And he's still trying to sort of prove himself here, but he doesn't quite get there until, we'll talk about a couple of years later or whatever. Sure. But Brad Pitt is an extremely successful celebrity that no one ever says no to. So it's like, how do you shave that off of yourself?
Exactly. But here's the thing. Brad Pitt, his choice in movies for that period was trying his hardest to get away from the pretty boy image and be taken as a serious actor. And that is Billy Beane. I'm not the young hot star player that didn't make it. I am the general manager. Yeah. Now, obviously, Brad Pitt's more successful, but that is definitely a link between the two, the character and the person. Yeah.
That is something so special, right? I'm so happy that you brought up that moment, because that really is incredible. That moment where you have an actor that can just arouse that feeling in us, and it's a moment. It's a fleeting.
You can't fake it.
You can't fake it. It's just one of those magical things that is about movie making. It's part of movie making.
Yeah.
Right? You could say, oh, it's casting. You could say maybe it's directing. You can say, but all of these elements come together in this moment here, right? And you've got this guy, and different people have different opinions about stars and star power and so on, and what you do with it, and how it's utilized in a movie and so on. But this is, and I think that it's not just this opening image, right? This recurs throughout the movie. It's consistently, especially in the second or third time that I'm watching this, I'm thinking to myself, I can't not believe this guy if I try.
Yeah.
It's just so baked in to that on-screen presence.
And it's interesting because he's putting so much on, and yet I still believe. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Because he's doing, he when he's pissed off at I think it's Philip Seymour Hoffman, and he walks away, does that funny walk with his arms. That shouldn't work.
Right.
You know, he's talking to Pete, and he's in Pete's office at the other team. I forget which team
Whatever team it is.
Yeah, whatever team he's at with Pete for the first time, and he's calling him over, and he's like, "Let's talk in the garage." And the way he pulls his hand over is so dramatic and over the top, like to let the audience know, and it feels so real. It's such a weird combination.
Yeah, and you get this idea right off the bat here in this opening that this is a charismatic character. Mm-hmm. He's a charismatic person. And I think at the very beginning of the movie, it's easy for us to say this in retrospect, right? We're all, ideally everyone that's listening to this has seen this movie already, right? But at the beginning, when you're seeing it for the first time, it's easy to think, Brad Pitt, working his star power, working his charisma, right? But this is a very, very intended, deliberate aspect of that charisma that I think that he's mixing into the concoction here, because I think what I've realized now is that these little charismatic moments that you're talking about, and this would be sort of the first one, they play directly into Billy being that out-of-the-box thinker.
Right.
He is different from everyone else. He can't help it. In some ways, it's bad. And we get that with these flashbacks and his backstory and whatever. He's a different kind of cat.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what we even get from this beginning and eventually is it kind of depends where you put your skill, how you play the game, so to speak.
Yeah.
And there are many different games going on during a baseball game. Right. We come to find, right? And different teams that are, associating with each other at the same time to make all this work. I really think that the fact that it starts with this downer sequence is really important, right? Because this whole opening beat of the movie, I think rhymes well with Billy as a failure in his backstory.
Yeah.
Billy as a failure in the middle of the movie. The pressure that's going to start mounting on Billy. Yeah. Right? We open with a failure. And I forgot to mention that opening sequence that I'm talking about, it ends with this almost an extreme close-up of just his eyes, kind of like a John Ford sort of like extreme eye close-up. Yeah. And his eyes just kind of close, not over dramatically, but they close in disappointment. Yeah. Right? Yet again, there's a lived-in feeling already to this performance. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. Just the way that he subtly closes those eyes, and the way that everything's cut together in these quiet moments and these cold images of the ballpark just being ghostly. Yeah.
Smashing the radio.
Smashing the radio. Yeah, I love how he smashes things in this movie. It's so...
It's entertaining.
It's delightful. Sure. It's very entertaining. Yeah. But the thing about Billy is we already start to get this idea. He's a very private, isolated person, right? And he would never be smashing that stuff
if someone were there.
Yeah. Except for one moment later on with the team. But that's because he really needs to make a point. Yeah. And that just kind of accentuates how important that moment is. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Was there anything else that jumped out at you about the beginning?
To me, it set up the feeling and the vibe of you're absolutely right, failure, but also what it's going to take. And this is more the next scene where he talks to the owner of the club, and they played their hearts out. Yeah, I mean, what more could they do?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to be honest. We're not going to do better next season.
Yes.
And that to me, that scene really sets up this world that we're in, which will be my main take eventually when we get there. Yeah. But of what exactly this movie is about.
Yeah. And that I'm really excited to talk about that after we do some scene surgery here. Because, folks, this is not just a baseball movie. This movie is saying some very important things And I feel like it's really it is subtle, like you said, Jesse. But in other ways, I feel like it's kind of screaming it at a mountaintop.
Yeah.
And it's just about people that are there, present to listen to what it's saying.
Yeah.
And I want us to be those interpreters for this brilliant movie. Let's go into scenic view. In this segment, we're going to jump around from scene to scene as we see fit, moments in scenes or entire scenes that really stuck out to us and that we can extract a lot of meaning from. So let's go right to this next scene that you're talking about, where he talks to the owner of the team, which only happens a couple times in the movie.
Yeah, it's really this one and a phone call and maybe one other time.
Right. But this is an expository one.
Yeah.
Right. We learn about Billy, and what do we learn about Billy here? That kind of carries through. What's revealed to us about him that you think is important?
That he's 2 steps ahead. He knows what he needs, and he knows he can't get it.
Yeah.
The owner says, I need you to be comfortable fielding a team with the money I do have, not the money I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a recurring motif in this scene where he says, is there anything else I can help you with? Which is exactly what Philip Seymour Hoffman says later when he won't play Hatterberg.
Yeah.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. This movie...
It's hard not to.
I know. Every scene has so much in it that is so grounded and earnest and subtle that everything is clear. But this scene is so good because it tells you what this movie is about. And this movie is about the effective use of capital. This is about capitalism. Mm-hmm. It's not about profit. It's not about winning. It's not about anything else. It's about what capitalism is.
That's interesting that you say that, because Billy seems to be completely driven by winning, and yet he also seems to be a master or sort of maverick thinker regarding what you're saying about using capital wisely, and that kind of speaks to his conversation with the owner here. But do you think that is there a tension between those two ideas, simply in it to win and what it means for the win, or just using capital well? Are they tied to each other?
They're definitely tied to each other, but they're not the same. Because if they were the same, the Yankees could win with 80 million.
Right.
They could win with 60. They double it, 40, right. 80. But they have to do more. They have to do more. They can't stop. They have to grow. Yeah. They have to take their best players. They have to feed off the life of the rest of the clubs in the league.
Yeah. So already we're getting this sort of idea of, because they do mention the Yankees, because
bleeding the team dry.
Right, exactly.
I mean, getting Giambi and all that.
Right. How could Billy not mention, hey, I'm competing with whatever he says, $120 million ball club here, and you're giving me, 20 whatever million. Let's get something a little bit better going here. So the money and the figures, they have to show up here. But I do love how Billy starts out, like you said, saying all of those just boring, necessary, dreary things. Well, this quip, then that one, they tried their best. What more could you have done? We were hoping for the best. Maybe next season, with a little fist pump. And then right after that, he you could almost just imagine him rolling his eyes in his head while he's doing all this. And then he gets to the brass tacks. All right, listen, buddy, I need more money.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The only way to grow is to infuse cash into your business.
Right. And that's sort of the philosophy right here at this moment.
Yes.
In the movie, right at the very beginning.
Yes.
And Billy sees that, he understands it, but we get this, there's something gnawing at him, right? He sees some kind of he doesn't know what it is yet, but he sees a space in there somewhere that can be occupied by some kind of a revolutionary idea, or not even that much yet, just how to spend your money. Yeah, because he's cornered.
Yeah, because in the very next scene, he's in the scouting room.
Yeah.
The scouting room is incredible. All those character actors, Nick Searcy showing up, barely doing anything. Yeah. I love him in Justified. He's almost the best part of that. show. But all the old school styles, like I mentioned before, they're like, it pops off the bat. It pops off the bat.
He's got a baseball player's body.
Yeah, he's got a square jaw. That guy, we can't have him. His girlfriend's a 6. That's confidence all the way.
Right.
His dick is in the room 2 minutes before he walks in.
Exactly.
And they're like, oh, yeah, good point. Like, what are we talking? And then I forget the guy's name, but the one guy, the main bad guy of the group, says
the guy who he fires later.
Yeah,
on.
exactly, for hitting him, which you get fired for violence in the workplace.
Yeah.
But Billy Beane says to him, okay, so we lost our first baseman. Is there a first baseman as good as him? Young. Mm-hmm. Well, no, not really. He's kind of the best. Okay. Right. And if there was, could we afford him? Well, no, not really. Then what are we talking about?
Yeah.
That's this movie.
Yes.
What are we talking about? We can't do it this way. That's the thing. Every company that's starting up now cannot do it the way Amazon does it now, or Apple. They have to do it their way until they succeed.
Yeah.
But they'll probably fail unless one other thing happens. And that's a teaser for the end of the movie.
Sure.
Which we'll get to.
Yeah, and right off the bat, for lack of a better expression, we see that Billy is entrepreneurial in that way, right? Instead of acquiring money, he wants to acquire wins and merit, right? And he wants to make up for so much lost time, and he wants to prove his worth. He knows he loves the game. He has most of the wisdom I think that the other men in that room had, to some degree.
Yeah.
But he sees something distant in the mist that's just barely visible, and no one else can see it in this boardroom. And the way that Pitt gives us this to us is just awesome, right? All of the things that they're saying, and the reaction shots that they use in this scene are amazing.
Yeah.
Rolling his eyes, just putting his hand above his forehead and just rubbing his...
Dude, my guy has a hearing aid and can't even hear what they're talking about.
Right. My favorite moment of this scene is he says, "Who's Fabio?"
Oh God, that guy.
That's a perfect joke.
And they're like explaining which baseball player they're talking about.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Who's Fabio? And because Brad Pitt says Fabio.
Yeah, but it's like
about for Fabio here. But then
but it's like about the player, but also Fabio the.
Right. But then he does. But then the old guy doesn't say who's Fabio right away. They share a couple more words.
Yeah.
And then at the least expected time, not too much time has gone by, but enough has gone by where you sort of forget it, and then the guy's just like, "Who's Fabio?" It's a perfect placement.
It's so funny.
Oh man, I love that. We're already starting to see, and I have a sort of take where Pete, who we'll meet soon, Pete is the scientist, and Billy is more of an artist, I find, in some ways, right? And this scene here in this scout room is illustrating for us that we have this man that he is proficient in the art of scouting. And not just scouting for players in this case, right?
Right.
He's scouting for ideas.
And talent.
Yes. Ideas and talent and a different approach that will be efficient in a new kind of way.
And that is exactly the quality. Those are exactly the qualities that an effective leader has in business.
Yes.
And that is why these new giants are rising, is because they've effectively achieved their goals through new ideas and under new circumstances and a changing world. They have evolved.
Yeah. He even says at one point, adapt or die.
Yes. But at a certain point, when you become the Yankees, you can't adapt anymore.
Right. Yeah. When you are the most evolved form, of the thing.
And you have no competition.
And you have no competition.
You're going to overpay
force you to adapt.
You're going to overpay for Giambi.
Yes, exactly.
And then you get the Oakland A's and...
Right. And so, yeah, so we're saying something here about just in general the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yes.
The spirit of innovation, the spirit of pioneering and exploring new horizons of whatever it is that your business is, finding that new angle. And I just think that they do such a very well crafted scene here, such a good job of differentiating Billy from the other men at the table in every possible way. His body language, his posture, how he moves, how he speaks, the tone of his voice. Don't you just feel, guys at home, when you watch this movie, he's so tired, he's exhausted, he's weary of this world that he's in.
Yeah.
And don't you just feel when they're talking, right away the other men are talking, just with these annoying platitudes and little quips that they start saying to each other, almost like they're announcing,
or they're almost like at their not a professional space but a club where they're reminiscing of old times. They're talking about how it was when they were young.
Right. And why can't you just let us do this, Billy? Why can't you just let us do our job? Right? That's what he says.
Everyone says that in this movie.
Just let us, exactly. Let us do our thing. We know what we're doing. You don't have to get in front of us. Just let me find someone to replace Giambi who we already know is a good player. Why can't you just let me do that?
Yeah.
It makes so much logical sense. And yet, when Billy says what he's saying, he says to the guy, it's logic. Right? So it's
the guy says, that sounds a lot like fortune cookie nonsense to
right.
me.
And then he says, it's just logic. So even logic itself evolves.
Yeah.
Right? In the world of this movie and in the world of sports. Right? What seems to be logical to you, one day, eventually there comes a time where that's going to change because you have to be in touch with what the times call for. And before you know it, you don't even know who Fabio is. You don't even know you're not even touch enough to know what the culture is saying.
Yeah.
You know, how it's speaking to the people and the fans and what works and what doesn't. It's just you're trapped in a jail cell of closed off ideas.
Right.
And man, this movie is, 2001, the new millennium, that season opener. I'm sorry, the Division Series elimination game, at the opening of the movie. That footage was from August 15th, 2001. Not even a month later, 9/11 would happen.
Yeah.
So much of just the entire society was changing.
And you forget
and
America's mayor is in this movie.
I know, I saw him in there, and I had to double take for a second there.
Yeah,
and that's
it's crazy.
Once again, folks, times change and priorities change, don't they?
Yeah.
What's a better demonstration than that?
It's incredible seeing his face not covered in dye.
Yes. Yeah, and that's for our political podcast that will start in... No, I'm kidding. But
Speaking Politics with Jesse Mendelsohn coming soon on the Speaking Network.
Yes, we're branching off, folks.
Yeah.
I just think that, it's such great exposition here. And again, it's so early on, and they're giving us what is happening here. And it consistently stays with us for the rest of the movie.
We're on the fourth scene of the movie.
We're on the fourth scene of the movie.
Yeah.
So at this point, don't worry, folks. We'll get to the end by about hour 5.
Yeah.
No, but...
this podcast will be longer than a game of baseball.
Exactly. Many extra innings in this podcast.
I have a quick baseball anecdote.
Okay.
My cousins from the UK came to America last spring. Mm-hmm. They're 12 and 14, or maybe the older one was 15 at the time. We went to see a Dodger game. They're in LA, and the older one, who's 15, goes, "So how long are these games?" He's from the UK. He doesn't know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We turn to him and say, "Well, they play for 9 innings, And he goes, what happens if they tie? And I went, oh no, he's learning.
You don't want to know.
You don't want to ask these questions.
They play an entire other 9 innings now.
Yeah. That would be great.
Elimination game right after the original game.
Yeah.
So what's another scene that really stuck out to you, Jesse?
So the next scene I really want to talk about is skipping past Jonah Hill's introduction, right into where he impresses Billy Beane. He shows that he's important. They listen to him. They have this whole conversation about what baseball means and the value of runs and the value of players that throw funny or only have certain attributes that are more important than others.
Yeah.
They go into the basement or in the garage, the lower level of the garage, and they have this conversation. I kind of want to skip that because the scene that is really interesting to me is the scene where Jonah Hill shows up for the first day of work.
Yeah, in Oakland.
Yeah, in Oakland.
Yeah.
And he shakes Billy's hand, and Billy's like, dude, don't shake my hand. I'm your mentor. I'm not. He's like, I'll shake your hand one time.
Right.
And we never see it again. He almost shakes his hand like saying, this is the last time we'll shake your hand unless I fire you.
Right. And again, it's so status quo. It's so...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, workplace, corporate. Yeah.
Yeah, and they because that's what Jonah Hill's expecting coming from Yale. And
Yes.
anyway, then he goes into the meeting. We already talked about this meeting. We kind of combined the two meetings, so we'll skip over that. But he walks in, and Philip Seymour Hoffman walks in and says, who's the guy? And he goes, oh, just some guy who's going to sit in.
kid, yeah.
The kid, yeah. And then they talk about his contract. The manager of Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
And to me, this sets the tone and the tables for what this movie is as a process film. Mm-hmm. And the scene ends with, seriously, who's that kid? And he goes, he's the assistant GM. Like, oh, he just leapfrogged everybody.
Right. Yeah. So I said Al. I meant Art. It's Art Howe.
Yeah, Art.
As an Arthur. It's such a cool... I just love the whole fish out of water sort of feeling of Pete, that Jonah Hill's character in Oakland.
Yeah. And of course, he shows up having done player analysis on over 50 players. So he's ready to go. The thing is, he's the subject matter expert. He is the sauce.
When he was only supposed to do 3.
Right.
Yeah.
He's the sauce. He can't stop working.
Yes.
He's the magic. But the magic is hard work and teamwork. And he's just a core component of it.
Yes.
And that is what makes, you guessed it, a startup business function, or the key talent.
Yeah.
And the talent isn't just Pete. It's David Justice. It's Hatterberg.
Yes.
But they all have their role.
Yes.
And it's up to
They
Billy.
find their roles.
And it's up to Billy Beane to coax that out of them, not to coach them.
Yes.
Skipping ahead a little bit, he starts talking to the players as the season goes well and as he's trusted more. But he's still reserved. He stays back. He doesn't. He's not taking Art's role.
Yes.
He's just talking about the one thing he talks about, the stats.
Yeah. He sort of guides. He has these little moments where he just guides as he needs to, just to stay in between the lines.
And it's like very clear he's trying to avoid the swoop and poop.
Yeah.
The swoop and poop. You know what that is?
Why don't you tell us in glorious detail?
I forget where I heard this. I mean, everyone will know what I'm talking about. It's when the boss walks in and gives a comment and then leaves, and you have to deal with the fallout, of starting over the project, or, hey, what if we did this? And then leaves. Mm-hmm. You swoop, you poop on everyone, and then you get out of there.
Gotcha.
I forget, everyone knows that situation, but I forget where I heard that version of it.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah, that is definitely what he's doing, but
that's what he's not doing.
Oh, Billy Beane.
Yes.
He's not doing that for sure. But when he does swoop in, what he does do is he just gives them what they need in order to
and he gets
move
to
in
the
the right
point.
direction.
He has a point to everything. It's not careless. When he talks to David Justice, he's real with him. He says, listen, I'm not paying you to be the guy you were. I'm paying you to be the guy you are. Be a little leader.
Yes. He's
Get
very
some
good at
runs.
that. Yeah. And again, another very important entrepreneurial attribute is very strong communication skills, knowing how to do that, which we'll get into a scene that I love in just a second as well. But
I want to hear your scenic view.
Oh, there's so many, but let's go right into it. That kind of communication skill, there's this scene where they're just not cutting it, right? They keep losing. Billy's starting to really worry. He's disconnecting with his daughter because she's worried about him and everyone else is. And he's kind of at a low point. He says, even says in the car, what the hell am I doing here? This is not working out. What's going on? And then what happens is we have one of these cool car moments with Billy where he just meditates. He's very meditative and hermetic. And then he just kind of looks and he says, yep, he's got an epiphany. And then we cut to him, coffee the next day, right at the morning. He goes into the office and then he grabs Pete, basically, and throws him into the office. And then he starts working his magic, trading players and changing things up and rocking the boat. And he does exactly what no one expects him to do at this point.
Sell his starters,
who he acquired in the first place to replace,
right? Or they were probably
players.
The next generation,
right?
That were already there.
Yeah, or at least he's trading the players that
the manager wants to play.
That the manager wants to play and least wants to be traded.
Yes.
Even Pete doesn't want them to be traded.
Yeah.
That's how you know that Billy is a true, deep gut kind of entrepreneur.
And the reason Pete doesn't want to trade them is not because he believes they are good. It's because he's afraid if he's wrong, it's on him.
Right.
Because if he trades their starters and Art has to play Pete's players, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yes.
And so that's why he's afraid. That's why he's saying, "Oh, are you crazy? We can't do that." He's playing it safe. Yeah. Oh yeah, sure, we can do this Moneyball thing. We can get these players in, but if he's not managing it, what do we do?
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt shows him what to do.
Yeah.
Get rid.
Yep. And then those communication skills start coming in handy, and he just starts firing off on all these calls with these other ball club managers, and he just starts playing this, this three-dimensional chess in order to get these people to succumb to what he wants them to do, and trading these players and getting them to say yes and everything. But what does this mean? I really think that we're showing Billy's true talent here.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe for the first time, other than having the wherewithal and the audacity to get Pete in there and to hire him and to change everything and to uproot it and so on and face off against the other scouts, to face off against Art, the manager. To do all of that stuff in and of itself is skillful. But this is a specific skill that he has, which is being able to fly or die. He chooses to fly, this guy, and as we start to reveal this backstory, we get this idea that he never wants to make this mistake again. The general mistake of just making a decision for the wrong reasons and not being more logical about things. And just being open-minded to accept other avenues other than whatever might be obvious, right? That's the space that he's exploring right now.
Yeah.
And he gets that instinct, and you get this idea that this is this guy's destiny because he wouldn't have that in him.
Yeah.
Right? He wouldn't, that
he wants
button
this.
Wouldn't have been activated. He wants this, and it wouldn't be activated in him to do that if he didn't mess up so badly in his past.
Yeah.
And
it's almost like he blames the scouts because he's told, it's almost like he's spread too thin. He's good at so much that he can't be a master at any point.
Right.
He was so naturally good at all five attributes that he never got to be excellent at the one or two that it turned out he needed to be.
Right.
Which is what he ends up doing.
Right.
Later, is by picking people based on what they can do right now, not their potential for the future.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's why he's so annoyed and deeply cut by all of this just like mindless banter. Mm-hmm. You know, the platitudes.
Yeah.
The little things that you're supposed to say, you know, because that's what makes him so special. He had this mistake-ridden past, and he's able to see with this sort of X-ray vision through a lot of the bullshit that's oriented with all of this businessy stuff here in team management. And I think that's the same thing that Pete's character is able to see. That's why when Pete talks with Billy in the scene that you were discussing before, like, you know, in the garage or whatever, that's why he's so taken by Pete. Because Pete is able to see with laser beam vision what the real value of things are.
Yeah.
And the last thing Billy would ever want to do is overvalue someone like he was.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense. So yeah, it's really hard to not keep talking about Billy because Billy's character is so interesting and there's so much there. But back to the scene that we kind of alluded to earlier, which is where Billy goes into the locker room after they lose, and Lil Giambi, the younger brother, is dancing to the music, and he's, you know, just kind of being a clown. And then Billy gets really riled up and starts yelling at him. And then this is the moment where Billy says, "I hate losing even more than I want to win." There's a difference. And that captures so much about his character. What do you think about that?
Yeah. It's because he's been hurt so much.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, his marriage is over. His playing career didn't succeed. Did he get the degree he wanted? Probably not. Mm-hmm. You know, he's been hurt. And he doesn't want to hurt, but he doesn't want to leave the game either.
Right.
He's addicted to it.
Right. And he's trying to find his place and his purpose.
Yeah.
Because he knows his value deep in his heart. He knows that he's a valuable, he's an asset to baseball.
Yes.
He's got the passion for this thing. He has so much knowledge about it, and he knows there's a place that he belongs to contribute in a way that maybe no one else has contributed before, but he just hasn't been able to find it yet. And I think that's why this really gets his goat. It's because this is just another form of failing for him in the process of happening. And he sees it happening, and he unleashes on these guys. And it's not terrible or brutal, but it makes an impression. And then that's why he decides to trade Giambi.
Yeah.
And then he starts to pep talk players, and this sort of changes an attitude in Billy.
Yeah.
Right? What changes here?
He realizes that because he's an asset to baseball, he needs to share that with the players.
Yeah.
I think he realizes what the effect is that he had, and he needs to continue it. And that's why Pete, Jonah Hill, we see more of that, and we see them start to trust him as they start to play better.
Yes. And they do start playing better. But kind of like what we were talking about before, why? Why do they start playing better? I mean, how would you even summarize it?
It's because Art had to play the players he had.
Yeah. And he's so against that at first. I love that scene where Philip Seymour Hoffman is such a badass in this movie.
Yeah.
He's so hardened, and he really takes on like the personality and the presence of one of those sort of just like bulky, hard edged.
He's a bull.
Yeah, he's a sports maverick bull kind of dude.
Yeah.
And you just can't cut him at all.
Right.
He's just he's 100%, badass exterior, and you can't leave a scratch on him.
And yet he's so emotional.
Yes, but he doesn't show it in the normal ways that people do.
There's that moment where he's hurt when he first talks to Billy, and Billy's like, "It doesn't matter. We lost the last game," and he's like, "So it's on me now." And he looks genuinely like about to cry, and holding it in. And then he leaves, and when we'll look at your contract later, and he closes the door and says he's the assistant GM.
Yeah.
And you can just see his eyes. Like, he's not like watering or anything, but you can just see they're full. Mm-hmm. They're full of emotion.
Yeah. These performances are, they're phenomenal.
Yeah.
And the Aaron Sorkin and Zailian script is, yes, it's wordy, but I've seen other movies that have Sorkin, whether it's a Sorkin movie or whether it's a Sorkin sort of collaboration, that I feel are just, they go completely off the rails in terms of wordiness.
This is because this is meat and potatoes.
Yes.
Like, it's all information. I have a feeling that Zailian wrote after Sorkin. I don't know for certain, because it feels much more like there's that structure of what a Sorkin movie is in terms of perfect narrative cohesion. Yeah. But it feels more like Zailian's dialogue, weirdly.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of cool because there's a lot of plot in this movie. A lot of things do happen with the trajectory of the Oakland A's in this season. Yeah. The ups and the downs, so there is a lot of visual stuff, but there is so much commentary and reactions of the characters that happen to the plot. Yeah, and it's very much the writers, in whatever order, taking the information and distilling it back out for the audience without being too cute. This movie is not too cute. And I will have to, and I do have to say, Bennett Miller is so good. And where is the follow-up to Foxcatcher? That's all I want to know. Oh, now. I didn't get to see that.
I didn't see Foxcatcher, but like to go from Capote to Moneyball to Foxcatcher and then just be like, I guess I'm not making movies. I don't know if he's trying, or I saw he did a bunch of commercials that are huge, those Nespresso ones that are big. So maybe he's maybe he's in a pool full of money and just like, I don't need this. But man, is this good. Money pooling.
Yeah. And that is an interesting aspect too with PSH, because he's coming from Capote, where he's the lead character in basically almost every scene, and an Oscar-winning performance, actually, right? Didn't he win the Oscar for that? I think he did. Yeah. And then he's this much more reserved, and it's the opposite of Capote in every way. Capote is flamboyant. Capote is much more academic and eloquent and studious, and this guy is just like, let me do my job, man. I'm a bull. Don't get in my way.
I'm a bull.
I love that. He really is a bull, and that's some character work.
I feel like the variety right there is his horns.
Yeah, definitely. You feel like it's glued to his head. You can't remove it remove it from him. When they start to acquire these new players, and things start to change. And that change is very fascinating to me because if you notice in this movie, when they start to get better, it's not like a smooth transition. Do you notice that?
Yeah, like, it's pretty rapid.
It's rapid, but it's also like a little awkward for all of them and bumpy. They mesh. At least to me, they mesh as a team, but like Hatfield, I think is his name, Hattie, the pitcher, Hattenberg. Thank you. Hattie is, just a nervous wreck. Yeah. Because he has to play a position that he's never played, which is very difficult. And he can't throw, right? Which I guess is why he's playing first base. Right. But he's already sort of this pariah, and it's a miracle that he even got hired to play ball again. But he has this scene with
David Justice?
With David Justice.
That scene is so funny.
Yeah, right after Billy talks to him. I think it's actually the next scene after the batting cage scene where he talks to Justice and says, hey, be a leader for these kids, like you were talking about.
And he tries.
And then he tries.
So bad.
And he tries, and he almost makes it worse for Hattie because he says, oh, well, what are you feeling out there? And he's like, well, as long as a ball doesn't be hit in my general direction. And he says, "Oh, what's really your fear?" And then Hattie says, "No, that's it." And then he doesn't even know what to say. He just says, "Oh, good luck with that." Good luck with that is what the guy says.
And they're having their cereal.
Some mentorship.
Oh my God.
When they're having their cereal. Yeah, these moments, this movie chooses, or Bennett Miller, or the script, they choose moments that are they seem to be a lot of moments that are in between very important plotty moments, right? And those moments bridge the big stuff together emotionally, right? They take their time with these in-between things. They're everyday things. Yeah, all this stuff. The plane, eating your cereal, batting practice. Who has a scene in batting practice, really? It's just not exciting. It's about the characters. Yeah, it's about living in this world and really feeling in it. Yes. And then they go on this winning streak. And but real quick, I was just saying that it's rough. Like it's not like Justice comes over and starts to be the hero with right. He still messes up, beating his chest and saying, "Hey, everyone, come surround me, and we are going to be a winning team now." He messes up, and it's just it's shaky. And even Billy's like inspirational little thing that happens once they start getting a little bit better. Right. He's like awkwardly saying to them, "Hey guys, I know there's a winning team in here, so act like one." He just like pats Hattie on the shoulder, and that's you know what I mean? This isn't. It's not working overnight. Yeah, this isn't Rudy. This isn't one of these famous sports film that has the incredible monologue from the lead coach that leads them all to victory. We're not watching one of those. It's not like that. And I like that because just like Pete says, it's kind of like a island of misfit toys or whatever he says, right? And they're just very unique for that reason. So, but yes, you were saying they start to get better. And once they start to get better, they just kind of discover who they are as a team identity. Yeah. And who they are is an oddity. Yes. So... And they just can't stop scoring. Yeah. And I wonder why. Yeah. Because he gets on base. Even if it's a walk. Do I care if it's a walk? Right. And then he goes, no. And then he goes, you want me to speak? Yeah, when I point at you, it speak. No, he does not. Exactly. It's out of order. Who cares? So I got a question for you, Jesse. Yeah. Several times in this movie, really I would say more from about the halfway point on, Billy says this quote, "It's hard not to be romantic about baseball." And I love that quote, probably for many different reasons. Yeah. But I'd like to get your thoughts on what that actually means to you as a viewer watching the movie, and what you really think it means to the real Billy Beane. Well, it's not about the numbers. It's not about the stats. It's about the people. Mm-hmm. And he gets to be a part of it again. Yeah. He gets to feel that again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I kind of get this feeling that there's something that kind of transcends, like you said, even the numbers. Like the numbers, he's crunching the numbers with Pete, right? And that is what gives them this sort of lane for success. But there's still these things that you can't predict that happen, right? You couldn't write that game, that 20th win game. I mean, and I think that he's just talking about like, there are just certain things that happen in sports in general, but particularly his sport, he's saying, in baseball, that they just transcend all forms of analysis, And that's like romance. Yeah. Right? Like you can't explain why you love someone or something. It's his romance with baseball. Romance didn't work out for him with a person, right? Because his real marriage is to the game, Yeah. And it's almost like he's talking directly about being married to this game. Like it's so romantic, isn't it? You know, this is why I'm with this game,
Right.
or with this person, if you could, you know, talk about a person that way. And I just love that even a person as tired and stumped as Billy can rediscover the love of the game constantly.
Yeah.
With irony. And that's such a beautiful thing. Because I think in any romance or any passion, it's like that as well, right? Like, you know, what are you really passionate about?
Right.
Whatever that is, hopefully you're constantly rediscovering why that is so.
Exactly.
You know, you're discovering all the layers of it and what it means to you. And we're watching this man do that not in real time, but in movie time. In this movie, we're watching that happen, and it's very cool to see. So, Jesse, I want to ask you, what did you think of this moment, speaking of this winning streak section of the movie? What did you think of this moment where Billy... This was haunting to me. I felt chills. I mean, I thought I was watching a horror movie for a second because I was so transfixed by this. First he speaks to his daughter, and she says, "Turn around. Don't worry, you're not going to jinx it, Dad."
Yeah.
He turns around, he goes... They score only 2 runs. They're up 11-0, and then Kansas City, I think it is, score 2 runs. And at that point, that's enough for him to turn around and bounce.
He just walked right back into the workout room.
Yep. And then he's just like, he's simmering in there.
What did I do?
Yeah, exactly. What do you think of this moment, like as it literally is in the film, and what is that saying to us about Billy?
It's much more about the character and the structure of the film than it is about the theme. Mm-hmm. But it's a perfect way to get you into that moment of like, wait, are they going to do this? Mm-hmm. It really is a craft thing more than it is a thematic choice, I think.
Well, I would try to push against you on that because I think that thematically, this movie is about a man who can't overcome his own failure. And the reason that this haunted me so much is that, you ever hear of that term cooler? You're a cooler?
No.
It's a person that...
Oh, like at the casino.
Yeah, casino cooler.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and for anyone out there that doesn't know of this term, it's... Who knows if this is real or not, but there are these people that are hired by a casino, and they're coolers because if someone has a hot streak on their roulette table or whatever they're playing, the cooler is hired to just walk around kind of covertly.
And just kill the vibe.
Yes, and just hover. You know, these are terribly unlucky people for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And they're hired by the casino to just hover around wherever the hot streaks are and to just sort of cool them off. Their mere presence just kills the hot streak.
Right. And that's what he's afraid he'll do.
Yes.
And that's about his fear more than it is.
Exactly. And that's the mystical aspect of it, right? Is that which one is it? Because this really happened.
Well,
it's probably didn't happen that he entered and then they scored 2 runs.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Whatever. But they're making the point.
Yeah.
Right.
God, that shot of him turning around and him walking in and Pete sees him.
Heartbreaking.
But it's brilliant until it's heartbreaking.
Yes.
It's elating until then.
Yes, it is. And it fills you with glee to watch this person that's just so... He's so guarded and on edge about all of his decisions.
Yeah.
And just watching him say, "Oh shit," when he hears the score on the radio, he's like, "I have to listen to it." Turns it on. Well, anyone that's just joining now has missed a lot. I love that. Yeah. And then he turns around. But yeah, it is heartbreaking. But it's also cool to see that relationship between Pete and Billy.
Yeah.
Pete is, I don't know if you noticed this, but there's I think Play-Doh. There's a poster of Play-Doh above Pete's bed when we first see Pete at his original home. And he's a stoic, deep thinking, money crunching sort of economics machine, this guy. And what he does is he cracks numbers, right? He crunches numbers. But he tries, it seems, to crack Billy. He's trying to understand how Billy works and how Billy functions, right? He's a complicated cat, this Billy. And Pete's sort of, he's enamored by him, by his passion and by his way of doing business.
Right.
And it's just so heartbreaking to see Pete's reaction to Billy's reaction.
Yeah.
You know, like, what did you feel when you saw that?
It was heartbreaking. I mean, of course. Yeah. You know, it's that moment where you're excited and then you see the runs and you're like, oh no, I let them fool me. I let this movie fool me.
And I love how in this moment with the runs, every time they show the scoreboard, they keep closing in on the number further and further until it's like an extreme close-up of like an 11 that pings onto the scoreboard and they're tied up and they blow the 11 run lead. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And then we get like such an iconic moment.
Which is?
Art gives in and pulls Hatterberg up.
Yeah.
And this is all emotion at this point. This is all the release.
Yeah.
And like Billy's there and it's okay that he was there.
And I love that. I think they do just enough setup of the Hattie character. Mm-hmm. Right? Just showing him at the beginning of the movie when they're approaching him.
Right.
We're already at the door
with
his kid. And you just kind of feel sorry for him. He's got to take care of his kid.
Yeah.
His wife just kind of seems like she's sort of lamenting what's going on. And they hug after he's hired and everything. And then he's so nervous when he's having that conversation with Justice. But then Hattie is the one that hits the game-winning run.
Yeah.
Right? The game-winning home run.
Yeah.
And that is so fun to watch.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch Billy react to it.
Oh.
Pete smiles for like one of the only times in the movie where Pete rises out of his seat and he's like levitating with joy.
I mean the fact that it cut, like as soon as you hear the pop, we cut right back to Billy reacting. It's just like it's electric.
Yeah. As soon as the ball makes contact with the bat and we hear that crunchy,
that airy pop.
Yes.
It's like
the sweet spot.
Yeah.
He just turns right away. That was so interesting. And that also speaks to his just knowledge of the game.
Yeah.
Like he just hears the tone, the tenor of that sound. And he just knows. He's immediately, wait a minute, we just won the game. Holy shit.
Yeah.
These are things that, you can't say them. They're visual.
You have to show them. You have
show
to
them.
feel it. You have to witness it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like these are real feelings happening here. So Jesse, I know that we've alluded to this a bit in the episode so far, but I'd like to really dive in and talk more about these flashbacks of Billy, his backstory.
Yeah.
Because they kind of intersperse it throughout the movie. It's not your typical sort of, hey, let's cut to a flashback at the right moment because the information is needed right here.
Right.
Right? And it causes the audience to be emotional to react to this specific thing. And it's all a device and it's working the way that it should.
And we don't even, and it stops like halfway through, I think. If I'm not mistaken. It's not like, gap. It just sort of like trails out. It's not like consistent or a structure. It's just when we need it.
Right. Exactly. There's a gap because we start to understand that Billy had, in his youth, he lived and breathed baseball as a player.
Yeah.
Right. And then we have this fascinating flashback of the scouts coming to his house. The way that those two scouts, Billy and his assistant, came to Hattie's house to recruit him and so on, right? So I just wanted to get your reaction to, like, first of all, what you felt when you watched these flashbacks and how that changed for you, like how you felt and what it meant to you as the information was slowly revealed of first, oh, he was a player, then, oh, he was a failed player. To go from that to the other thing. How did that work for the movie for you and make you feel?
So for me, it really informed on his character that he's a straight shooter. He wants to be honest because he was told the money from the Mets is a reflection of their interest in him.
Right.
Which is interesting that in Moneyball, when he starts playing Moneyball, he's not interested in that. He's interested in giving them an opportunity.
Right.
And his end, he only has to pay a certain amount, but he's not going up to Chris Pratt and saying, I know you can't throw, but you're going to do it again. You're going to throw again. You're going to make the money. You're going to be a star. No, you're getting a chance to play and make a living. I never got that as a player.
Right.
I was sold the dream. I was sold the lie. Mm-hmm. I was drafted in the first when I shouldn't have been.
Mm-hmm. And that's how he tests Pete.
Yeah.
Right? Would you have drafted me in the first round, Pete? Would you have drafted me?
Yeah, but he gives them a second chance because he knew he lied.
Yes. And you almost feel that he was just destined for it not to work out. Because it's just so against Billy's nature to conform. Not to say that he didn't have any control, but I'm just saying that the movie presents this in such a way where it feels to me like, oh, this is the natural result of who the guy is. Or, the expectations.
Whereas I think the expectations molded him. Mm-hmm. As opposed to he's a failure as a baseball player. Baseball is such a hard thing to... Professional sports, they're like 300... They're like hundreds of spots and thousands of people who can fill them, and tens of thousands who want them, and millions who watch. The fact that he should have been drafted in the 9th versus the 1st is not about him as a failure. It's about the game being unfair.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what's romantic about it.
Mm-hmm. And I think Billy figures that out. Yeah. We see the sort of progression of him figuring what you just said very eloquently out on his own.
Yeah.
Just in life, experiencing all the things that he does and the failures and talking with other folks.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things in this movie, particularly having to do with Billy Beane, aside from throwing crap across the room and it breaking, which is very entertaining, is his loathing and his animosity toward just generic banter.
Yeah.
He actually says some of the things that are generic, but you can tell whenever he does it.
He doesn't believe him. Yeah.
He doesn't believe it at all. It's just total regular, exactly.
Talk,
blah, blah, blah.
Talk. I'm doing the hand motion.
Right, which he does in the talk motion, which he does in that scout scene, the first scout scene.
Yeah.
This is what I'm seeing, guys. It's just talking. He loathes that. Yeah. And I love that because that's what gives him that extra ingredient that allows him to transcend all of that and to be able to see things from a different perspective. But I just love these moments. And in these flashbacks, which is what we're talking about, you can see that starting to germinate a little bit. Just with even the actor that plays young Billy.
Yeah.
You can even see the skepticism in his face. Right, I mean, I know that he's presented with a dichotomy here, right?
Right.
Hey, you can go to was it Stanford?
Stanford on a full scholarship.
You can go to Stanford on a full scholarship, or you can play ball. You can go to the show.
Yeah, it's up to you, son.
It's up to you, buddy. Son, whatever you choose, we support. Yeah. Right, and that really is the choice of the individual.
Yeah.
Like the scout says, at some point, someone tells you you're not playing children's ball anymore. Everyone hears it, but it might be a different time or whatever it is. But when he hears it, the performance of that actor, I mean, if you're an 18-year-old kid, Jesse, and you're hearing that, hey, buddy, come to the New York Mets, a premier ball club, with a ridiculous fan base and ridiculous facilities and everything, all your dreams as a young boy.
How can you not?
How could you ever say no to that?
Yeah.
Right? And they even said, how could any team say no to drafting this guy who was a 5-tool player?
Right.
But how can you say no? It is the absolute epitome of what the dream is. Now, that reaction in the flashback, it didn't quite say that to me. He was truly, I think, skeptical about what the right thing to do was. He didn't react like I think a lot of 18-year-old teenage boys would react.
And holler. He basically said, like,
with a little smirk and
what if he's like, I get to play, but what if it doesn't work? It's almost like that's crossing his mind.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Like he's got it in him to be able to have foresight, but he doesn't have the experience yet.
Yeah, he makes a choice because he doesn't want to miss the opportunity to have played Major League by going to college, because anything can happen. You could decline, you could get injured.
Yes. So, yeah, he ultimately does take them up on the deal. And I just, there are so many things that connect so beautifully in this film. Like you said, when the scout slides the number toward him and says, we believe we want you badly, right? We believe this is a number that accurately reflects how much we want you. And of course, that happens near the end of the movie, which we'll get to quite soon. But that's just it. There's so much involved here. Yeah. And there's so many different games being played in this movie. It's not just baseball. It's the game of business. Yeah. And I also like to think, like, one of my little takes is there are multiple teams. It's not just the Oakland A's. It's the Oakland A's, and it's the team of Billy and Pete. Yeah. You know? And the team of Billy and Art, the Philip Seymour Hoffman character. Yeah. There's so many players involved in these different games that are all happening and being played at the same time in order to hold up this franchise that we don't know about unless we watch this movie. Yeah. And it does such a good job, I think, of showing us what happens under the hood. Yeah. You know, to get the whole thing running. Yeah. And back to my metaphor about business, about what this actually says is... Sure. He does it. He does what no one else thinks he can do. He can put together a successful team. Mm-hmm. And he falls just short of the finish line. He can't get the flywheel going. He can't get the engine to run on its own without more cash, without more injection, without doing it again. And will he even get there next year? He falls short. So what happens to him? He gets acquired. Right. Amazon buys him out. The only difference is he doesn't take the offer. Everyone else in our world takes the offer. Yeah. They go to the company, they assimilate, they become the giant. Right. He doesn't. He doesn't join the Red Sox. Sure, the Red Sox haven't won, but they're a massive institution, a big club with lots of money. Yes. Again, the dream. The dream. And yet the dream is tainted. The dream is awful. The dream is everything you hate about baseball. How do you think so? It's the money. It's the excess. It's the baseball coach. I mean, the owner of the Red Sox hands him a piece of paper and says, I believe this offer reflects our interest in you. And Billy says, I'm not making that mistake again. I'm doing what I believe. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm not snatching at a chance of success. I'm going to build it. Yeah. And so much of this world are people snatching at chances because it's so hard out there that you have to. Right. And he didn't have to, so he was able to stand up to them. Yeah. And that is exciting. And that's why when the card says he's still looking to win the last game of the season, it means something. It's because he's not giving up, because he's surviving, because he's fighting for what he believes in, which is a solid ball club. Right. So yeah, that's exactly right. And that's where it goes What I'd like to do first is
Sure.
just let's examine how it gets there, because you just described it very well. But you kind of made it seem a little bit like, he just gets the offer and then he rejects it. It's not like it's easy for him, right?
No, it's not
it's one of
easy
the
for him.
hardest things for him. And before we get there, because that's going to be our closing image, which we're closing.
Which we're not talking about just yet.
We're
I
closing
definitely didn't
in
talk
on
about it.
Right, of course. We're closing in on it, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk first about, and then we're going to get into all of that fun stuff, his relationship with his daughter and his ex-wife, for that matter.
Yeah.
But especially with his daughter.
Yeah.
You know, we have this beautiful scene, I think, of him at the guitar store this is sort of the first act or maybe the middle,
Right.
of him trying, basically, I think, picking which guitar to buy her or something as a gift. And he just witnesses her doing her thing. And he basically discovers that she can sing and convinces her to do it for him. And he's touched by it. What do you think that Bennett is saying with this scene? And then the subsequent scenes with the daughter, too.
Right. I mean, it's about presence. It's about being there. It's about what you choose to do with your time and what you do with your time. And he's reevaluating that.
Yeah, for sure. I also felt like he sees himself in his daughter. Mm-hmm. Not in the way that he's, a failure, but he sees passion.
Yeah.
He sees passion that he doesn't understand, right? When it's someone that maybe isn't as close to you, sometimes it's hard to understand someone else's passion, right? And you're not as sort of moved by it because it's just so foreign to you. But when it's someone who's your own flesh and blood, like the daughter is to him,
Right.
there's something, he doesn't know anything about music, presumably.
Right.
Right? He doesn't know about the guitars. She's sort of teaching him. She's kind of telling him, I don't like to do this in front of people. He's kind of learning. But he's so good with her. He listens to her, what she says. He gives her a chance to teach him about something. And he sees his own passion for baseball in her, but the analogy moves to music and her own skill, her own utility of a skill that's just innate, and
Right.
you can't explain it. And when he's moved, when she plays for him, I couldn't help but think,
Well, are we at that? Because that's the last shot. Are we there?
oh no, I mean at the guitar store.
Sorry.
Yeah, at the
Okay.
guitar store. When she plays for him and he just he covers his mouth.
Yeah, he does
Remember?
that a lot.
Yeah, well, he does it a lot, but
But that one specifically, for sure.
yes, but I don't mean like the covering the mouth like I'm nervous. I mean like he's floored.
Yeah.
He's surprised. You get the sense that this is a character that has just seen everything in the world and been there and done that. He's not surprised by much. He's just kind of weary of everyone and everything. But when she surprises him with that music, he says it's beautiful. So he recognizes that it's a beautiful thing to have the passion for the thing.
Yeah.
And at that point, he's kind of at a low. So he's like, I see now from an outsider's perspective what the passion that I have is. And then he's basically thinking to himself, I think, how do I channel this? What can I do with mine? But when he sees it in her, it just reminds him of him when he was a youngin'.
Yeah.
And just all of the possibilities, perhaps all of the mistakes that maybe she will make in her life that he has no control over.
Right.
Like his own parents said to him, we support you.
Yeah.
Of course, they weren't baseball players, I don't think. Right? They didn't know, in the same way that he doesn't know about music. Go off and, yeah, sure, go study. Yeah, sure, do that band. Do
Right.
whatever you need to do. I'm just giving you free rein because I believe in you. And I think that all hits Billy at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm getting like goosebumps now talking about it because this all comes through in Pitt's performance, that all of these internal things are happening in that character as he's seeing his daughter grow up and grow into a thing, a passion.
Yeah, a real person.
Yeah, a real person with real emotion attached to a real passion.
Yeah.
And that's a hell of a thing, I imagine. I'm not there yet, but it's a hell of a thing for a parent to see.
Sure.
How does this factor in, Jesse, with kind of the relationship that we start to see, not blossom because it's already there, but the other parts of the movie that we see, her being nervous for him trying to encourage her.
I mean,
what do you think this relationship says for the movie?
It's so hard for him because, you know, she talks about the internet and hearing all the bad things about him. He's like, don't listen to that. She's like, the internet.
Right.
He's like, oh, whoops. But it's very much like he really isn't there for her. Mm-hmm. Like emotionally, when he's there, it's like 1,000%.
Yeah.
But you need someone there 100% of the time at 100% energy, or maybe like 80% energy or 70% energy.
Yeah.
But 100% of the time, not 1,000% energy, 5% of the time.
Yeah. And
I think that's where we get to by the end.
Yeah. There's so much responsibility that's mounting on this guy that I think we really see that. He's responsible for his players. He's responsible for the team. He's responsible for his daughter. He's responsible for putting on some kind of a nice face with his ex-wife and her and
right.
her apparently, you know, what he thinks is pathetic new husband or whatever, because
right.
he interacts with him as least as possible. There are all of these things that are mounting, and then it comes to this one question that we start to ask in the end, and we're approaching the final sequence now, about what is the priority in life, right? What is our purpose? What is the meaning of our life? I mean, these are the biggest philosophical questions we can answer, and this movie spells it out in innings.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just so cool how they managed to do that.
Yeah. Now we get to that Jonah Hill scene.
Let's get up to it. So, yeah, I'd like to talk about this Jonah Hill scene. I would like to preface this, what I consider to be this sort of closing sequence, which is only a couple kind of shots, couple moments, with this scene that Jesse and I are referring to. So let me summarize this quickly for you guys, and then we're going to get our thoughts and our takes on this, because this is the real juicy stuff here. So first what happens is Billy gets this offer, and he's thinking about it. He's mulling it over back in the office at the A's stadium, and it's nighttime. He's pondering it. He's alone. We think he's alone. And then Pete comes up to him, and he says, "Hey, did you have a good time over there in Boston?" He said, "Very impressive." Right? And then Pete dogs him to show him the offer and tell him how much. He shows him, and then he says, "That would make you the highest paid manager in sports history."
Yeah.
Okay. And then Billy immediately responds by saying, "So what? It's money." They have this little exchange, and then Pete says something along the lines of, "You're not doing this for the money." Because
you're doing it for what the money says.
Yes. And what it says is that you're worth it.
Right.
And because the whole thing is, Billy actually just before that says, "I made one decision based on money, and I swore that I would never do it again."
Yeah.
Because it was his undoing.
Yeah.
But like you said, it really just was formative into who he really was.
Or who he becomes.
Who he becomes, yeah. After that, he still seems like he's just very confused about what he needs to do. And then Pete says, "Come on, I want to show you a piece of tape." And then Billy says, "I'm not in the mood to watch film. I've got a lot on my mind."
Yeah, we got all year. We got till
all
spring.
year. What are you doing this to me for? I want to get some sleep. And then Pete says basically that he insists, "No, come here. I want to show you this. You're going to like this." So then Billy follows him into the room where they review film. They review tape. Mm-hmm. The tape is of a player that had just recently happened, but a hitter had hit a home run, and he didn't realize it. And he kind of ran to first base, and he was trying to to steal, and he went back, and he was trying to touch the plate and not. And then it's revealed that everyone's laughing at him, and then Pete reveals that, well, actually, he hit it over the fence. Yeah, and he didn't realize that he hit a home run. And then there's this hilarious little moment where Pete says, it's a metaphor. And then Billy's like, I know it's a metaphor. Get out of here, Pete. Yeah. But then he calls Pete a good egg, which was very heartwarming.
Yeah.
And you can tell that means a lot to Pete. They get each other.
Yeah.
They see the version of each other that most other people don't see.
Right.
They get where they come from. That's why they're interested in asking each other, where'd you go to school? Yale. He kind of wants to know his how he became him, his backstory.
Right.
And he wants to know about Billy. He studies him, and these two are
they're from different backgrounds, and they're linked emotionally.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Because they're outside thinkers.
Yeah. And they get each other. Not just the process of how they think, but the person that is that other person. And that's extraordinary. I mean, that is so rare between two people, whether it's friends or a romantic relationship. When people really get each other, and then there's that partnership there where you can accomplish stuff together. I mean, that's incredible. And this movie shows that progression of how that relationship is built so incredibly well. But anyway, after he says, I know it's a metaphor, he leaves. And then we show, this is another great moment.
Yeah.
Billy leaves, and Pete is just still hanging out there because he just lives and breathes his job. He apparently has absolutely nothing else outside of this ballpark.
Yeah.
But he's sitting by the security monitors or whatever. And Billy is out there, and we see first Billy in an extreme long shot of the outfield. And Billy is tiny. And he's just in there and just exploring it, still thinking.
Yeah.
And then we see it cuts to a sort of medium long shot of Billy in front of the board that says Oakland A's, right? And then he lies down on his back and just sort of almost like a kid that's going to make a snow angel or something,
right?
And he just kind of takes it all in. And Pete notices this on the security camera. He looks at the footage. He sees Billy lying on his back, and you get the sense that he really just understands Billy's dilemma.
Right.
And then after that, we cut right to this final car moment.
Yeah, there are a few car moments, and this is the final one.
And they're all so good.
Yeah.
But this is the final one. And it's this same kind of profile shot that we see from the passenger seat toward the driver's seat, and Billy is thinking, and then he takes out of the console a CD and he puts it in, and it's his daughter's singing. It's her voice first. She's got a voice message for him. She says, "Hey, if you change your mind," implying that he already chose to go to Boston. Yeah. If you change your mind and stay in California, great. If not, you're a really great dad.
Yeah. That's just so sweet.
It's so sweet. What an intuitive kid, because she knows what he'll be thinking. He'll be thinking he's not there for her, even less than he already is not there for her. Then she starts to sing the song, and I just wanted to write down a couple words in the song. I'm just a little girl lost in the middle, or lost in the moment, depending on the verse. I'm so scared. I can't figure it out. Slow it down. Enjoy the moment. I can't be something I'm not. Life is a maze. Love is a riddle. These are just some little phrases that I found striking from that song. And it's so beautiful. And then, sort of toward the end of what this moment is going to be, we push in, the camera pushes in slowly on Billy. It's incredible, right? And it's just handheld, so it's so raw, basically, or it's steady, but it's handheld, basically. Yeah. It feels handheld. And we push in all the way up until we get to Billy's eyes.
Well, it cuts on the beat.
You're right, it does cut.
Which is an incredible moment, because it like when it cuts as the guitar strums and she says, "Enjoy the show," that's when we get close on his eye.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
And that's when we really get like, oh, he's serious about this.
Yes.
About this change in his life.
Yes. So you're right. There is a cut from the same angle, basically.
Yes.
It just cuts it, pushes in.
Yeah, and it just emphasizes the moment.
Yeah, it punches in. It punches in, emphasizing the moment, landing on his eyes. His eyes are kind of shifting back and forth.
Yeah.
They're sort of observing his surroundings because we see those sort of like
Vista.
those wells or
Yeah.
whatever those industrial, steel things are in Oakland that he's so used to seeing on his drive to work.
Yeah.
And he's just thinking, and we realize he's got this dilemma. The implication is he can't leave again. He can't do this.
Yeah.
This is where he belongs. He's having this sort of epiphany of where perhaps this is his home. He sees home.
Yeah.
In a sense, he's kind of seeing the home run that he didn't realize that he hit.
Right.
Just by being there, and that's
It's a
sort of this
metaphor.
metaphor, I think.
I know.
And I think he just sort of learns from all of his mistakes in this kind of one moment of shifting back and forth, and this is what this is leading to. And by the way, I'm just talking about what's maybe internal here. This isn't,
Yeah, of
we
course,
don't know
this is
this yet, right? Because then the next thing that happens is we see this title, and this is the moment that the movie rocks your world. It's with this closing title. Mm-hmm. It says, Billy turned down the Red Sox offer of $12.5 million and chose to stay as the Oakland A's GM. Okay. Then, new title. 2 years later, the Red Sox won their first World Series since 1918, breaking the curse of the Bambino. And it says, then it just says that, and then below it says, embracing the philosophy championed in Oakland.
Yeah.
So that's, it initially says the Red Sox won, and then it appears as an extra like addition to the title.
That
embracing the philosophy
exactly.
in Oakland. Whew, that's brutal. And then it says the last title, Billy is still trying to win the last game of the season.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that just, if that doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what will. Jesse, what do you think of this last sequence from the Jonah Hill scene with the tape up until the end?
I mean, it caught me off guard. The first time I saw it, I was blown away by it. And then the second time I saw it, I was like, I remember this being amazing, and I don't remember why. I don't remember
Me
what.
too.
Yeah,
Me
exactly.
too.
And then I watched it, and it hit me again just as hard.
Right.
But it sneaks up on you, and it's so obvious it's funny. And it's like, of course, you got to enjoy the ride along the way. You can't let it go. You can't let it slip through your fingers. And he makes the right choice in the end, I think.
Right.
For himself and his family and for the A's.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's this sort of heartbreaking realization that, hey, winning really isn't everything.
Yeah.
Right? It's about priorities. And I just love how the movie is. It's just self-aware enough where Pete says it's a metaphor. I know it's a metaphor.
Yeah.
I love that moment.
It's so funny.
It knows exactly what it's doing.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't overplay that little moment of levity or moment of comedy or whatever.
Yeah.
It just ushers him into that next moment of, okay, it's starting to sink in.
Right.
What that even means.
Right.
And it's just so cool to see Pete be the one that is sagacious and gives him that advice.
Yeah.
For the first time.
Yeah.
The tables have turned, yep. And Pete has finally sort of understood how to access Billy.
Right.
Like in a deep, profound way.
Yeah.
And he's been studying him the whole movie just for that moment.
Yeah.
It sends a chill down my spine. I love it.
Yeah.
And
then you get that amazing scene, and it's just the emotion. It's just a cap, just to tell you where this is going, or show you where it's going before it tells you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that car moment. What were you feeling there?
Just it was spine tingling. It was just all up and down your arms.
Yeah.
At first you think, oh, this is going to be, it's the part, you do the thing where you hear the song and yet it hits you anyway.
Totally. And yeah, exactly. Speaking of subverting expectations, like to me, I don't know about any of you guys out there, but to me, it was fairly obvious from her CD voice message that he had already chosen the Red Sox. And he was kind of getting emotional because he was thinking, I'm leaving all of this behind.
Yeah.
But then that next caption, and we've already left him because it cuts to black. So it just leaves you with that kind of seared in your head. And you're thinking about that, and then it hits you with that twist.
That he changed his mind,
He changed his mind, and it makes you kind of rethink what he was going through in that moment.
Yeah.
Which was, I can't leave this.
Yeah.
This is my home.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful. What could be more powerful than that? It goes back to like these age-old morality tales.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
How can you not be romantic about baseball?
Right. Exactly. Oh my goodness. How can you not be romantic about Moneyball? Ooh, it's so good. But yeah, I just have to say, when you love something so dearly and there's the best possible version of it out there, right? The most luxurious version.
Yeah.
Impressive, as Billy said. The gall and the self-discipline that it takes to turn that down in real life and stick with what you know and what you love to be important to you.
Yeah.
It's godly, I would say. People that do that are just elevated to God status to me because it's amazing. It's almost like subhuman or superhuman.
Yeah.
And it's incredible to think about that people have the capacity to do this, because we do know how much it means to him just to do something that seems to correct for the past.
Yeah.
It's like all he cares about, right?
Yeah.
But then he finds the thing that he cares about perhaps even more.
Right.
The stuff that's already right in front of him. Right? To have the vision.
Yeah.
And the emotional intelligence to see that being the priority. And again, having that formative experience of failing in the past for a similar reason. This is a heroic choice. He was already sort of heroic.
Yeah.
He did heroic
but now he's a hero.
things. Yeah.
To himself. He did right by
hero.
himself.
Yes. And by his daughter.
Yeah.
He wants to be there.
Yeah.
Because he realizes there are other things that he loves just as much or more.
Right.
It's not just about him. Maybe he lost his relationship with his wife because it was mostly about him.
Yeah.
Well, then guess what? He learned from that mistake as well. And that informed his decision as well. So it's a lot of just life stuff coming together and hitting this character in a very believable way. And the performance comes together. The song, the performance by the daughter character,
so
the
good.
daughter actress, the cinematography. It's just, wow, it's just almost mystical. I know I said that about Ghost World too, but
It's
endings like this just make me, again, fall in love with movies all over again.
Yeah.
Every time I see this movie and this ending. Incredible.
It's the perfect balance between emotion, art, and humanity.
Yeah. And if that's not the best last word, I don't know what is. So thank you, Jesse.
Yeah.
So my fan question for today's episode is, fill in the blank with your preference. It's hard not to be romantic about blank. Why did you choose that? Are you to this thing as Billy is to baseball? Please tell us about it. So I had so much fun with this episode.
Thank you. I had so much fun too. I love Moneyball.
Yeah, me
and
too.
it's one that snuck up on me when we were deciding what movie to watch. It passed me on Netflix and I was watching it for 20 minutes. Then all of a sudden I finished the movie and I'm like, wait, why don't we just do this?
Yeah, it was Jesse's idea. And
it's a 2-hour movie that flies.
It does. It flies by. and you really don't feel the time at all because everything seems so significant and deliberate and important. And all systems, all cylinders are firing in this movie to make that happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one hell of a baseball movie, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
So I really hope that everyone got something out of this episode. And please, if you like what you've heard, please follow the podcast, subscribe, and review. Those all really help our algorithm, and share as well on whatever platform you receive this on. I would love to extend a huge thank you once again to Jesse Mendelsohn, our guest, for returning and gracing us with his presence again. And yes, there's the baseball crowd cheering for him. You can almost hear it. But yes, thank you, Jesse, for coming again.
Yes, I mean, it's incredible. Thank you so much for having me. They're doing the wave. It's really something to behold.
They're doing the wave for you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much to you guys, the listeners, for joining us as well. We just have so much fun with this podcast, and we can't wait to do the next movie, which will be a surprise. But we always reveal on social media posts what movie we're going to be doing about a week prior, so you can see it and spend some time with it, and then spend some time with us and the podcast when it drops, which is usually the 1st or the 15th of each month. I'll see you on the next episode.